it's Allison, and welcome back. But today I'm using a different LPS. I'm using Mary Lou, and there is a reason for this. Because today we are going to be talking about an old series of mine, LPS Painful High. And this came about, sorry about my dog, but this came about because a few weeks ago I took a bunch of LPS to the hotel with me, and I was taking different pictures, and one of them I took of Mary Lou, and I was just thinking about how badly I screwed her over and how bad I feel about that. So today we're going to be talking about why the series was so tragic, some things that changed throughout it, and just what happened in general. So let's get started. So I actually started the writing for this series back in 2016 when I was in grade 5, and that's where the very base original idea foundation for this idea came about, which is crazy. In the first 4 episodes are actually following majority of the original script I wrote, which was terrible, but it was. And then later I script the whole thing from episode 8 onwards. But yeah, it was quite a lot. But I did start the original series, and it was originally going to be different, but it had some similarities. So first of all, the name is supposed to be Pain Side High instead of Painful High, but I changed that because I realized that it sounds way too similar to Plain Side High by LPS Emily, so I was not going to have that as the name. So the first difference was actually the twins. So if you watch Painful High, you know that 2 of the main characters, the main protagonist and the other girl, are Julia and Paige Round, and they are twins, and they're puppy twins, and Paige is the main protagonist, and then she meets her twin sister Julia, and it's just this whole thing. But the original twins were actually different LPS with different names. So this LPS was actually supposed to be the original twins, because I did have another one of this back then until a couple years ago when I customized it as Misty. But I used to have 2 of these cats, but these LPS were going to be the original twins, and their names were actually going to be different. So Paige was actually going to be named Sarah, so Sarah was going to be the main protagonist, and then her twin sister, the mean one, was actually going to be named Kelly, which aged quite well, because now this LPS is Kelly in my popularity series, and now that's just her name. But yeah, so it's very strange that I had these original ideas back then. And then another thing that stayed the same was Mary Lou. I did not change that idea at all. The beginning of the series was still the same. The twin Paige, or Sarah in the original, was going to reunite with her childhood best friend Mary Lou, which was this deer, and I did not change that. Mary Lou still has the same happiness and personality she had in the original that I wrote. So Mary Lou stayed exactly the same. I think I had just gotten this deer, and I was so excited, and I loved her so much. So yeah, that is why she was Mary Lou, and she is still Mary Lou today. So Mary Lou did not change. Another thing that changed is that the series originally was gonna have all these cool sets of these homemade things, homemade accessories that I made, and they were actually pretty well done, but then they ended up getting destroyed when we moved, so that didn't end up happening because I just didn't have them anymore, so that was unfortunate. But the original sets were supposed to have a lot of things like that, but that didn't end up happening. Sarah's room had all this cool stuff, and yeah, that didn't happen. And then another thing that stayed the same is the mom character in both the original and the one that I wrote. I spelled it differently back then, but I kept the name Kendall. And I think originally she was supposed to be a different LPS. This is the LPS that she is currently. And originally, I think she was a different Persian. I just can't remember which one she was, but it worked well since the twins were cats. Now, when you look at the current series, it doesn't make sense that the twins are dogs and their dad is a dog and Kendall is a cat. But yeah, the name Kendall stayed, and the same personality stayed for her, so that was still the same. So in the original, there are a ton of other characters that I listed that now I have no idea how they ever played into the story, and I really don't remember. But some of the characters also did end up staying the same, and one of those characters is Madeline. She was a different LPS, because I used a lot of Leah's LPS in the series. She was a different LPS. I can't remember which one she was supposed to be, but in the original, the same thing happened. She left Kelly to go join Sarah and Mary Lou, and then of course in our version, Madeline left Julia's group to go join Paige and Mary Lou, which made Ash go crazy, kick the walkers, and kicked off the whole drama. So that was the same, and they had the same friend group. They had Madeline join the group, and then they met Sierra, who was also in the original. And I kept their names the same. They were different LPS, but I did keep their names and personalities the same. But the Mean Girls group was actually very different in the original. So we know that in our current version, the Mean Girls group before it got destroyed was Julia, Ash, Rebecca, Tavy, Flora, and Queenie. But in the original, the group was Kelly, Queenie, Bootsy, and Cuddles. Now you can see the only one that stayed out of that was Queenie, and she stayed the same LPS. But Bootsy and Cuddles are basically two pets. I have no idea. Well, they're in the bin right now, and I don't feel like taking them out. It's like a blue bunny and then a blonde cat. And they came in the same pack as Queenie. And those are actually like their original names of what Hasbro put on the back of the box. It was like during that generation of LPS. So I always had them like doing things together because I had them as like best friends, because they came in the set together. So that is why they were like the Mean Girl trio in that. But in the original, the only one that in the new version, Queenie is the only one that stuck, and I felt like that was actually a good name, and I kept her the same. But yeah, that is why the Mean Girls group changed. And then in the original, there was no like Ash, and there was no getting sent away to the actual painful high where they got like abused and everything. The original pain was just supposed to be like all this drama that happened from them switching lives, the twins, and then just high school drama. But then I decided to rewrite it as actual drama and torture. And why did I end up doing that? So I started planning the current version of this series in 2021, then I started filming it throughout parts of 2022, and then I completed it and uploaded it all in 2023. But I think in my mind, it was something different that I needed to, something that you don't normally see in LPS2, where there's not always a happy ending, there's not always a happy reality. And I know that doesn't make sense, but I always try and go for that in my series, but in this series there just wasn't. I feel like it was just me getting like anger out through writing and violence, and not that these are thoughts or things I wish upon anyone, because they're horrible, and I of course do not support this kind of like child abuse and craziness, like it was horrible. But just sometimes I was like, let's write something that's gonna be like jaw-dropping weird. It's going to be crazy, like, and all the characters, almost all the characters die. And why did I do that? Honestly, I still regret that, but why? Also, spoiler warning if you want to go watch the series. It's not great, like, I didn't realize it, but during like most of the episodes, you can hear like my other phone messages going off constantly. I thought the music would drown it out, but it wasn't, because the other phone I was reading the script off of, like, it kept getting messages constantly, so you hear that a lot, which I'm sorry about. But I think one of my main things I hate about the series, I did plan, is when I killed off Mary Lou, because she was just my absolute favorite. Like, look at her, she's adorable, she was so happy and sweet and just a great friend. So like when I killed her off, I was so broken. I almost felt it right along with the characters. And I think that's what most people are kind of mad about when they watch the series. Why did I have to kill off Mary Lou? I mean, I killed off like 90% of the characters, but why Mary Lou? So I know I'm Painful High, it's really bad, but then at the end, there is only one redeeming, saving character that doesn't end up screwed over, and in my series, that ended up being Madeline. But when I was writing it, I had a really hard time deciding if it was going to be Madeline or Sierra that would be the only saving character in the end. And I decided to go with Madeline because Madeline, I feel like she deserved better in the series, and she reminds me a lot of Jenny from Popularity, not as shy, but Madeline is also anxious, she's also gone through a lot. But I decided that she would be the final character because I feel like she was kind of the root cause of a lot of the stuff that happened. Like, it wasn't her fault, but like, she was the one that changed everything by joining the other side. She is the one that like made Julia and Ash upset and caused the craziness. Like, but she was still there for all of her friends, and like, she showed that change and kindness can change everything. So I thought that it was in her character. Sierra's was also super sweet, and obviously the other characters in the end that betrayed them, like betrayed their friendships with Madeline, they're going through a lot and they're not processing it correctly because they just went through a huge trauma. But the thing is, I went with Madeline because I just feel like she was the sweet one that always like wanted them together, and it wouldn't be in her character after like some of the stuff that happened to her, like specifically, that kind of made her be the only saving character. And Sarah, I loved her too, but she was just kind of more in the background sometimes, I feel. And feel like Madeline had the potential to show like kindness and bringing people together as she brought the groups together and found herself, which helped Julia and Paige become close, even though it ended horribly. But, that's why.